Oh, I need to pull up my...
All right. We're
I can
live.
go. Oh, hey everyone, and welcome to the Dissenter Weekly update for March 25th, 2021. As you can tell, everything's going well today as far as our technical foibles may go. I'm Kevin Gosztola, the managing editor for Shadowproof. And before we get rolling on our whistleblower stories that we have for this week, Brian has some things, as always, to tell you about subscribing.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Good to be here with you. Thanks, everybody who's joining us today. Just your regular reminder to make sure that you are following wherever you're watching us so that you can stay up to date, not only on this weekly stream, but I know that Kevin occasionally does other streams on our channels as well. And it's also just good to follow us because that's where we're also publishing all of the work that we do at shadowproof.com. So please do that. And if you like it and you want it to keep going and you appreciate the work we're doing, please remember that we are 100% funded by readers, people who give $5, $10, $20 like you. So you can go to shadowproof.com/donate and chip in to keep this going. You can also subscribe to Kevin's newsletter, which we'll talk about at the end of the show, at dissenter.substack.com. Let's go right in. Our first story here. The pandemic spurred a record number of workplace retaliation complaints from whistleblowers. Kevin, why don't you start us off with this first story? Kevin, did we lose you? All right. I think we might have lost him. Let's hold on one second, folks. I wish I could walk you through the news, but I actually don't know the stories. I guess Kevin is the only one who can do the show. So now we're just going to sit here and wait for Kevin to come back. I wonder, let's see what happens. He's having an internet connection issue. Just bear with us 1 second, folks. Independent media, folks. It's literally just me and Kevin. There's nobody else here behind the veil. My fiance's laughing at me in the corner. You can see my sleeping dog. How's that? We'll do some Shiso broadcasting. Just consider this a commercial. I wonder if you guys can hear her snoring right now. Oh, boy, what a week. All right, I think he's coming back. Thanks for sticking with us, folks. Should be here any second. I can see him starting to come back in. Still waiting. Let me see where he's at. That's right. Jared just said, "I'm here for the dog" in the comments. It's our B-roll here. Nope. He dropped out again. Well, folks, if you're here in the chat, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about Shadowproof. Anything you might want to know? Why not? Let's see. All right, folks, hold on one second. He's calling me.
Mike.
We got you.
Hold on a second. Then you can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You're
Problem
live
is
right
I'm
now.
trying to get... Is it my headset that's screwing things up? Let's try this.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Okay. Let's get rolling.
Cool. First story. Why don't you lead us into it?
All right. And sorry for this. We're usually a little more professional, but today, for some inexplicable reason, the internet decided to malfunction at the exact moment we were trying to do this. So, all right, here we go. So today's first story is about, it's from Whistleblower Network News, and this has to do with the record number of workplace retaliation complaints that came from whistleblowers. Last year, they filed 3,448 retaliation complaints with the Office of Safety and Health that is in the Labor Department. This is a fiscal year record for most whistleblower complaints received by OSHA. And the The Whistleblower Network News also noted that the record number of these complaints filed also is an issue because there's been a lack of private action. And that's even more pronounced now. It's accumulated. There's a lot of these complaints that have been sitting backlogged and they haven't been acted upon. This is another reason why the whistleblower protection program under this agency in the Labor Department needs to be resourced. It needs to be properly staffed. We need better investigations so that when people do turn to this, it's not like national security whistleblowing, but when people do go through this proper channel and they expect some kind of an action, they expect an agency to follow up on their complaint, that they actually do get that follow-up. We've covered this before on the show, and important context to this is that last year we had Reuters do some reporting on this, and when there were workplace outbreaks, Reuters found 106 workplaces in the U.S. where employees had complained about the lack of pandemic safety. So they took like a sample and tried to see what percentage were resulting in inspections. And for the most part, regulators were not going there to follow up on the claims. They weren't investigating. They were waiting several months, if they even bothered to show up at these facilities, to see what might be going on with pandemic safety measures. The agency never inspected 70 of those workplaces, so out of the 106 that they examined. And there were at least 4,500 workers that were infected by the coronavirus at these facilities, and 26 died after contracting COVID-19. And we're talking about places like Tyson and Tesla and other companies that had this issue. One study found that OSHA had only resolved 2% of complaints that whistleblowers had submitted to the agency. So again, just doing an atrocious job. It's possible that the new administration could move that number up ever so slightly, but Republican or Democratic, it doesn't matter, because all presidents in the last 20, 30 years have been rendering this largely toothless. There have been complaints by whistleblower advocacy organizations saying that more needs to be done to make the provisions in the whistleblower protection program at this agency in the Labor Department better, so that everybody can have complaints investigated.
Thank you, Kevin. Let's go right into our second story here. We have the U.S. Consumer Agency is investigating a Tesla whistleblower's complaint involving solar fires. I think we talked about this last week, right?
No, this is for this is for just this week. So Tesla has apparently been responsible for orchestrating this campaign of retaliation against Stephen Henkes, or Hanks. I don't really know how exactly his name would be said, but we have in the story that was covered by the CNBC News that in fact the systems that were defective and dangerous catching fire, that's something that this consumer agency, the United States Consumer Protection Safety Commission, which I wasn't very familiar with until I read this article that it exists, that they are looking into these allegations. I'm not quite sure what they could do as far as helping to make him whole, but he does have a separate whistleblower lawsuit in Alameda County and in California, and that was submitted in November 2020. He filed this complaint with the Consumer Protection Safety Commission in April 2019. And he also has a complaint that he filed with the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission. And so this against Tesla alleges that when he was a field quality manager for Solar City, this is a company that was acquired by Tesla, there were thousands of residential and commercial systems that were installed, which would just catch fire. And when he brought these concerns forward and he made complaints, they ended up basically freezing him out, making sure he wasn't part of meetings that had to do with the parts in these solar power systems that were causing the fires. And in particular, this affected, what happened is Walmart actually sued because of the fact that it was affecting their customers. And so then when this became known in New York State court, it opened up this story, and there was public knowledge and awareness of what was happening with these solar power systems. But Henke says that before the lawsuit with Walmart, that in fact he was advocating that something had to be done about these solar power systems. And so this is I think a good whistleblower story to stay on top of. Tesla's retaliation and some stories we've heard before about the anti-labor practices at Tesla mirror and are very similar to kinds of things we hear about Amazon. And he was terminated on August 3rd of last year. After he brought his complaint to the Tesla Supply Chain Reliability and Human Resources Department, at that time he was complaining about, quote, flat roof racking components that Tesla was installing, which were not safe, and that the modifications needed to be tested prior to reinstallation. That then he ended up being terminated from Tesla. And this is out in California. And obviously, quite a concern here about whether these were contributing to wildfires in some of the parts of the West Coast. I think he wanted to make sure that as weather changed, he didn't want those solar panels to be responsible, or the solar power systems to be responsible for worse tragedies than just standard smoking or whatever might occur with, like, maybe the system would just fry and it would stay isolated to where it was installed. But they knew, and apparently, according to the CNBC report, they actually have only just now begun to deal with these aged. CNBC called it the aging solar fleet. They've only now begun to deal with it. But the Tesla Solar, it's not what Tesla's known for. They're known for the electric vehicle, but they've generated a lot of revenue as a corporation to keep them going while they develop the electric vehicles, and it's been a stabilizing source to have these clients. Overall, Solar City was responsible for 60,000 residential customers, and then they had 500 government and commercial accounts at the time of this issue. And these connectors, they're called Amphenol H4 connectors. The problem with this was something that they were putting off and not notifying customers that they had a problem. And in fact, he says that he was pulled as a presenter 2 hours before there was to be a campaign team meeting with Walmart, because they didn't want Walmart to find out that they were aware of these tooling defects. And likely, I guess whatever partnership, whatever business arrangement they had might have been pulled if they knew that the systems had these defects. So this is an important whistleblower story, and he's in court. Tesla's trying to pull a corporate maneuver and force something called arbitration, which would mean that it doesn't go to trial. It means there's no jury, or there's less publicity on the case, and whatever the arbitrator decides, and then that's what the outcome will be. And he, as a whistleblower, wouldn't be able to appeal that outcome if he thought it was unfair or not good enough as far as the result. And So as he seeks damages, as he complains of his retaliation and tries to get some kind of, I suppose, justice for being let go and terminated, that's what Tesla's trying to do, is to basically suppress his ability to demand any redress for what he went through.
Thank you, Kevin. We have whistleblowers are alleging abuse and are helping shut down a youth detention center in Delaware. What's this story?
So this story is happening in the state of Pennsylvania. The Delaware County Detention Center was ordered shut down after public defenders called attention to abuse allegations, which were in a letter that was sent to the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services. This facility is in Lima, Pennsylvania. And actually, what's interesting about this, Brian, is that I think this is also where the Kids for Cash thing originated. Do you remember?
I remember that story.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to just read. Normally I don't like to make a habit of just sitting here and reading entire news articles, try to put together a summary that covers a lot of different sources and has my own views and incorporates some points that are not just, sitting here reading you a news story. But I don't think I can do a better job of compiling the more essential elements of what's going on in this rather stunning story here. So from WHYY, the local news affiliate that I suppose we should credit for breaking this story. I didn't find it somewhere else. They write, among the disturbing accounts are allegations of physical abuse that include a staff member ramming the head of a child into a reinforced window, an attempt to, quote, induce a miscarriage, end quote, on a pregnant teen, guards forcing a child to drink from a toilet, a disregard of suicide protocols, and several instances of beatings. One girl was allegedly given a black eye after being beaten by a guard who then bragged about it. WHYY goes on to say, in addition to the claims of physical abuse, there are allegations of verbal abuse laced with racist, misogynistic, homophobic, and transphobic language and slurs. The letter says that a Muslim child was threatened with isolation. So by the way, so we're talking about the letter that these public defenders sent. Says that a Muslim child was threatened with isolation for wearing a hijab because the staff objected to its color. That's a quote, objected to its color. A Spanish-speaking child was berated for not speaking English. Another child was called the N-word, and a trans child was outed by staff and prohibited from continuing her hormone treatment. Additionally, the letter and affidavit details several instances of using solitary confinement practices on children for days or weeks on end. In one case, it says the staff left a child with mental illness in isolation covered in her own excrement for days without running water. This all sounds very nightmarish. When confronted by a child with the possibility of reporting misconduct, this is another part of the article, a supervisor said, quote, "Do you really think a judge is going to believe a bunch of juvenile delinquents over a corrections officer?" So that was recorded in some manner. All of this was able to occur, they say, because there's a culture of secrecy that was built on a fear of retaliation. And of course, that's a theme that's very relevant to our show, because a lot of everything we talk about, the excesses, is a result of that culture of secrecy built on a fear of retaliation. Many of the incidents occurred in the camera's blind spots, which were known both to staff and children. So as they looked at these examples of abuse, they were able to see that there's an element of trying to cover it all up to make sure that that was not something that was picked up for the authorities. Chris Welch is the director of the Public Defender's Office. And this is from a different article. But I did want to read what he's saying is the most important thing now that has to be done for these children. And I think what all the other whistleblowers, the people who are aware of this, are trying to push for is that, we shut down this facility. And they mentioned that there are 3 juvenile clients that are charged with aggravated assault for assaulting guards at the detention center. And it's our position that those clients are actually the victims and that the guards at the detention center are the aggressors in the situation. So we have these pending cases. I think they're trying to probably get those dropped. And now they need to speak with young people who had previous contact with the facility staff to figure out if there are any cases they need to bring involving the abuse that went on in the center. There's a major investigation that will need to unfold, but this county facility has been entirely shuttered. All the people who were in there in confinement were, for lack of a better word, just liquidated, just sent to other places. I don't know that they were freed necessarily and are back with their families, and they could be in other detention center like facilities, but they're not there anymore because of the atrocious conditions that were exposed.
Thank you, Kevin. If I can make a quick book recommendation, one of the books that I think turned me into an abolitionist was a book called Burning Down the House by Nell Bernstein. And I would highly recommend folks out there take a look at that book. There's something like 40% of people who are incarcerated as kids end up incarcerated by the time they're 25. So just something I wanted to throw out there. Let's go on to our Julian Assange.
And if you experienced,
go ahead.
Well, just and if you experienced that, like how would you not
absolutely
end up any of those things that I just described? If that was how you were treated, what do you think you're going to do? Would we fault anyone for acting out after going through of deciding that they needed to go after somebody? And yeah, so it's kind of like we reap what we sow, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So the update on Julian Assange's case, I don't have a lot of news. I realize that there are people out in the world who pay attention to my coverage, and they're anxiously looking for any updates on what the appeal is going to be. And did Assange's legal team decide to cross appeal? Are they going to challenge the decision and say that it should have protected Julian Assange on press freedom grounds and not just because of his mental health, and what would happen if he was brought to a U.S. prison and put in a supermax facility in solitary confinement and suffered horrendous abuse? And I don't know if they've been able to come to the decision and submit what they needed. I am not sure if the court, the appeal court, has agreed to review this, although I presume that they will. I don't know if there's any decision yet on what the U.S. government is putting forward. I actually don't know if the U.S. government has put forward a full-fledged argument to the court on why they're appealing the extradition beyond the announcement. Well, actually, we know that they did that. I haven't seen it posted. There's been no reporting on it. None of this is public. I suppose it won't be public until the court that's going to hear the appeal agrees to review it. So a lot of this is all happening secretly. And I suppose eventually Assange's legal team could force some of it out in the open and describe what is going on with the Biden Justice Department. But the biggest thing that needs to be said on this show right now, and it looks like I may be having some issue with internet's coming back. I think I might have slowed down there. So we're going to wrap this up as quickly as possible so that you can get the full update, and we'll have a shorter show because the internet has not been kind to me today. Maybe they just don't want me to talk. Whoever you decide who they is, they's whatever group of people you see.
You know who they are.
Yeah. Maybe they just don't really want me to talk about Assange and these other topics. I have no idea. So the thing that I wanted to add in here was we had a great free Assange telethon that I participated in. It was hosted by Jen Perlman and Katie Halper. Much thanks to them for getting together a roster of people. But more importantly, I think what was really good is that they went and put together a script for people to read so that there could be hundreds of calls that were made to the Justice Department, that were made to the Senate switchboard, and also to the offices of representatives in Congress. We want to put this case on the radar of people. I want you to think about how unusual it is to live in this country where this case is originating. This is the place where this is coming from. The Justice Department in this country indicted Julian Assange, a publisher, and everyone around the world is looking at it, wondering what it's going to mean for global press freedom. And yet, Congress people aren't staying up to date on the case. Senators aren't staying up to date on the case. I don't know that White House officials, and I don't know that anybody in any of the government agencies, well, they're actually complicit. They're involved in prosecuting the case, but there's really no people in the legislative branch who are paying this case close attention. They're not talking to people in their districts. They're not talking to people in their states about it. They're just ignoring it, and they are fine with it moving onward, it seems. Compare that to parliamentarians in European countries. Compare that to Australia. Compare that to Brazil, or other countries in Central and South America. There you have people who are elected who are paying attention to this case, even though their countries, excluding Ecuador and the UK and Sweden, are not responsible for what is unfolding against Assange, but they have decided to give this the attention it deserves. Excluding, Australia can always do more for its citizen Julian Assange, but there are politicians in countries that are not part of what has been unfolding against Julian Assange, and yet, they are taking it upon themselves to follow it. But yet here in the U.S., we see members of Congress and senators avoiding this case. And so that's why the calls were important. And we had the telethon. I was on the segment with John Kiriakou, a good friend, and somebody whose whistleblower case we have supported. And then Medea Benjamin, longtime peace activist, co-founder of Code Pink. She was on to talk about what we could do to keep bringing attention to what's happening to Julian Assange. And so I encourage anyone who stumbles upon this to make a call. Go find the Senate switchboard. If you look for hashtag Free Assange Telethon, you can find this script as a guide. You could also find the number for the DOJ that having people call in order to raise issue with this case. So all of that is important. I had a couple other things I was going to bring up, but the internet connection is just not stable today. So let's go ahead. I'm actually seeing back here. I can see they look like the Wi-Fi rays of death. Like,
well, I can hear you fine. It's not clipping on this end, so
it's not audio. If it's gonna do anything, it's gonna make my video slower. Yeah. It's gonna slow down my video. So it's good that everybody can hear me. I'm glad that we were able to get out some updates. There's the newsletter. I encourage you to go subscribe. I put up for springtime, a 30-day free trial option if you would like to go and see what it's all about. I'll be doing some more exclusive pieces in April, and that'll pick back up. There are some stories to explore. I recently got to see the documentary that premiered at SXSW, the United States versus Reality Winner, done by Sonia Kennebeck, who is a director of National Bird, which has whistleblower Daniel Hale in it. And as I understand it, his trial is actually starting in the first week of April, which is something I'll have to keep tabs on. I'm not really sure how coverage will be of that, but I definitely intend to follow that closely because he's charged under the Espionage Act. But Sonia's film premiered at SXSW the past week, and I'm going to do a piece about it just because it's a good presentation of what happens to whistleblowers in this country. And then beyond that, you can stay tuned. Next week we'll be back with another edition of the Dissenter Weekly, and that's really all I have. I'll say generally thank you for your support. Thanks to everyone who continues to subscribe to the newsletter, making it possible. We have some big plans, aspirations for it, perhaps this year. So everyone who decides to subscribe, you're making journalism, independent journalism on whistleblowing and these issues related to freedom of the press and government transparency. You're giving that a boost, and you should just know that I am extremely grateful for you all making that possible.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for duking it out with the tech difficulties. I'm glad we were able to get you back in here, and likewise, thank you to everybody who stuck around, who went, stood up, stretched, came back, got to see my beautiful dog sleeping, which I put on the screen for a little while you were dealing with computer problems. Yeah, I was letting everybody see me pet the dog. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for showing up.
It's like the fireplace.
Exactly.
It's like
the Yule log.
So when we have the Yule log, like when we have an error, you just need to have you petting Shiso on loop.
Yeah,
we just need to feed that video into the Dissenter Weekly, and then people will know when that's, and it's comforting because a lot of this stuff's unsettling. So
yeah, and who knows, maybe Shiso, we're beholden to our readers. If you want Shiso to have her own show on our YouTube, I'm more than happy to abide by that. But yeah, thank you everybody for sticking with us, and we will see you next week. Take care.